I will take this opportunity to extend a welcome to everyone to this session today. We look forward to having an engaging session about the subject of customer, which is a cross-cutting issue for anyone in doing business, and an interesting topic, especially this time where we have been facing the pandemic. Before we go further, I would just like to give a brief introduction of Invest in Africa, and then we can proceed from there. So Invest in Africa is a private sector partnership initiative with the sole aim of driving economic growth and job creation. And we do so by catalyzing growth opportunities for SMEs. Our vision is a Pan-African one, which basically is to prosper African economies. And we do this by enabling trade and catalyzing opportunities for SMEs and large corporates. And primarily, we do so by enhancing the SME skills so that they are able to increase their capacity to trade. We also support SMEs towards improving their access to finance by making them investor ready. And the last thing that we do is supporting the SMEs to be able to access markets. We have a vision that by the year 2025, we should have created jobs to the tune of 1 million, and to have created opportunities for SMEs through the supply chain of big corporates and multinationals to the tune of 1 billion USD across Africa. To date, we continue working with SMEs, supporting them in trainings, in mentorship, as well as in coaching, and also ensuring that SMEs are able to engage in transparent business. We are working around three thematic areas, which forms the basics of what we do. First, we have a very sector focus on food and agriculture, where we run programs towards helping SMEs in that value chain. The second one is the extractives, where we have oil and gas as well as mining, supporting SMEs who are doing trade along that value chain. And the third one, we call it infrastructure, but involves telecoms and as well as construction. So we are a partnership initiative. We work with partners both in the public and the private sector. So today, as part of our program today, this is under what we are calling the SME Recovery and Resilience Program, where we have been running a series of masterclasses, and we'll be sharing a link where you can visit the previous forums that we held. We also undertake coaching and peer-to-peer sessions, as well as investor-ready programs and as well as Knowledge Academy, where we have a wide range of resources where you can benefit as part of this program. And at the end, we'll be sharing some email of our colleague Pauline Mushai, who you can get in touch with to get more information about this, and we'll be sharing this with you. Our speaker today is none other than Frank Mwiti. Frank Mwiti is the East Africa market leader for EY East Africa. And if you have attended our previous session, he's been giving very insightful knowledge, as well as borrowing from his skill and experience. And today he'll be taking us through the session on customer acquisition and retention. And as Lucy had said, today's session primarily is he will be unpacking an integrated customer acquisition and retention strategy, and telling us how we can acquire new customers and maintain the existing customers and keep the trajectory of profitability, while also understanding the customer journey. Frank Mwiti is an experienced business leader. With the last 18 years, he has been handling strategy, he has been learning governance as well as execution at a large, complex transformational programs across the private and public sector. At EY, in charge of the firms across the firms advisory and transactional, as well as assurance and tax services in the line of EY's significant plan and growth ambitions. Before joining EY, had extensive experience as the managing director of managing consulting firm in London in the UK, and is also an associate director at the United Bank, the UBS Investment Bank in the UK, as well as holding a senior management role at Assurance Advisory at EY, as well as the PW, both in UK and in Kenya. Frank has extensive executive management qualifications in business strategy, artificial intelligence from the famous Massachusetts Institute of Technology, data science qualifications from the University of California, San Diego, as well as the General Assembly in the UK. He also holds a law degree and is also a certified accountant. So welcome very much, Frank. And Frank is also a people person, and you will be experiencing this so much in his presentation today. And without much ado, I welcome Frank Mwiti to take over the session. Welcome, Frank.
Thanks, Dennis and the IIA team. So as Dennis has mentioned, we've had a number of masterclasses sponsored by both Invest in Africa as well as MasterCard. And today's session will really focus primarily on customer acquisition and retention. To start off with, the agenda really has 3 key items. The first one is customer acquisition, which we'll cover in a bit of detail. And I'm hoping I will share with you examples of acquisition strategies that both big businesses as well as small businesses employ, irrespective of which sector you're in. And then on the back of that, we'll also talk about customer retention. And I will emphasize the point that actually retaining your existing customers is the preferred way of growing your business rather than necessarily acquiring new customers. And we'll also touch on that as well. And then I'll share with you a hint on a framework we have from EY called the EY 7 Drivers of Growth that some of you may already be aware of based on previous masterclasses, but I think it's important to highlight it because it also gives you a sense of how practically to build a roadmap around the customer pillar. And then we'll open up to Q&A. So starting off on customer acquisition, I suppose it goes without saying that the real essence of this topic is how to get customers, how to keep them, and how to grow your customer base. And there's also a lot of assumptions on what it takes to get customers, who's a real customer, what it takes to keep customers, and more importantly, what it means to grow customers. For example, around growth, it could be you're growing the number of customers, or you're growing the amount of products you're selling to your existing customers. And there are even schools of thought that encourage you as a business person to constantly look at your customer base and sometimes exit certain customers. In other words, leave certain customers. And that is also part and parcel of how you manage this life cycle of the customer. So we will be, the points, the ideas we'll be sharing today should resonate with these 3 steps here: how to get customers, how to keep customers, and how to grow customers. There's an assumption I've made that you know what a customer is, so I will not go into details on that. It's a working assumption for now. Right, there's a bit of distinction I wanted to highlight here. The 2 go hand in hand, but it's important to make that distinction around customer acquisition on one hand and customer development or retention on the other hand. The 2 are different but related. And on the customer acquisition side, we are talking about how you raise awareness of your business, your brand, your products, your services, how you nurture that attention, the audience attention or the potential customer attention. How do you create desire for your products and services from the audience you're talking to, and how do you then transition that to an actual purchase, an actual engagement by the customer, an actual fee from a customer. So that's part of really the thing that we're calling customer acquisition. On the other hand, customer development and retention is more around how do you support your customers once they are become real customers, they bought from you. How do you nurture loyalty to make sure that your customers keep coming back to you? And of course, how do you also drive advocacy on your particular service offerings? So the two are related, but there's some distinctions on which is which. Okay, now the most significant, these all manner of service that have been conducted in this space, including some done by our own firm, EY. And what has constantly come up is that customer retention and customer acquisition are the two biggest revenue drivers for any business, irrespective of size, whether you're a small business or indeed a big business. So customer retention, which we'll cover in the second half of this presentation, accounts for about 52% of your revenue as a business, and about another 45% would be picked up primarily by customer acquisition. Now, these numbers don't add up to 100% for obvious reason. That it's a survey done in terms of factors that contribute to revenue drivers rather than the summation of it. But the key point to take away from there is that if you start focusing on, for example, new sales channels, or start focusing on just pricing and promotion, actually you're not employing the best use of your resources and time to drive revenue. You rather focus on how to retain your customers and also how to aspect of acquiring customers, less so the other bit. Why? Because as an example, part of customer retention is understanding what your customer really needs, how they prefer to be serviced, and that can then drive these other bits, like for example, what products you need to innovate, how you need to sell to them, what prices you need to set for your products and services. So again, customer retention, customer acquisition, they are two of the most significant revenue drivers. So it's important to get your strategy around this very, very clearly. The customer acquisition universe has many things, and this information you see on the slide right now is in the context of the new world we live in, where there's a lot of non-traditional media, for example, around digital, around use of social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter and things like that, referral programs, aspects of events like the one we're having here now, and of course the stuff that we all already know, whether that's TV, radio, sponsorship, print media like newspapers, and softer stuff like public relations and strategic partnerships and alliances. So the customer acquisition universe is quite broad. How you decide where to focus most on is part of now the customer acquisition strategy. Even more importantly, where you decide to spend your sales and marketing dollars and your customer service attention will be, of course, part of your customer acquisition strategy. Now, there's an indication here on, again, the differentiation between acquisition and retention. You can imagine that if you don't have sales, you're 100% focusing on customer acquisition. As you acquire sales, more of your effort is focused on retention. Okay, and again, I will come to why retention is what you should focus on more, particularly if you have already existing customer base, rather than acquiring new customers. For every dollar spent acquiring new customer versus spent focusing on your existing customers, the return on investment is, in some studies show, 10 times. Your dollar or spent taking care of existing customer gives you almost 10 times return versus $1 spent trying to acquire a new customer. I've echoed this before in previous master classes, but it's a point worth re-emphasizing, because a lot of our SMEs spend quite an unlimited amount of time and effort and money focusing on new customers instead of spending 80% of their time and effort and budget taking care of the existing customers. That's the key takeaway really from this session. And the most successful businesses, particularly big businesses, do that very well. They focus on servicing their existing customers better and more wholly than new customers. And part of the reason is it's easier to service them. They even become the guys who actually enjoy your service to the point where they do not argue about pricing. They enjoy your services and products better to the point where they refer you to other customers, so you have an easy acquisition of new customers through your existing customers. They're the same ones who will tell you about, who will open up about the challenges and limitations they're having, so that you can solve them for them, etc. So retention, focus your effort on retention rather than acquisition, but we'll talk about both in this session. So expounding a bit more on customer acquisition in Universe before we talk about the strategies themselves is, so we are saying acquisition is when your customers first encounter your store or your product or your service or yourself, okay? And that's really the first encounter. You then, from that acquisition, that first interaction, you start trying to activate them so that they can sign up for your service, your product, and your communication. Once you activate them and they've had a good experience, then you focus on retaining them. So the example I've given here is, assume you have an online store. The first time they come to your online store, or in fact even a physical store, is the acquisition point. As they get to experience your store, interact with your materials, that's activation. Once they come again to buy from you or to experience your offerings, that now starts talking about retention, and then there are aspects of revenue, referral and revenue. But the key point is that first touch point is the beginning of that journey. In the old days, people used to view customer acquisition from the left side, where we have a lot of marketing, which you hope turns into a sale. So you would splash things on TV, you would make announcements on radio, you would print things on newspapers, hopefully, and you send out people there to talk about your products. Hopefully, the idea was that will generate sales. It kind of worked. Nowadays, it's not like that. Nowadays, the focus is on, it's a flywheel. So it's well-rounded. It has 4 sort of segments to it. There is an aspect of attracting strangers, and the specific ways you attract strangers. There's an aspect of converting those strangers into prospects, converting those prospects into customers, delighting those customers to the point where they promote you to other strangers, and the circle continues. So you're attracting, you're engaging, you're delighting. That is the essence of growth, rather than the traditional way of just splashing out your marketing and other sales activities in the hope of acquiring customers. Okay, so note the difference, that we've moved on from single type mass media spraying of the potential market to a more strategic way of getting potential customers in the door, engaging with them, converting them into customers, delighting them as existing customers, so that they then drive the acquisition of more customers who are not in your circle. How does that happen actually? The first thing is, as you raise awareness, and we'll touch on that, you create interest. Okay, as you raise awareness, you create interest. In technical speak, essentially those two will be leads, potential opportunities for you to gain a customer. Now, once you create interest, what then happens is those customers will want to hear more about your product or your service. They will want to ask about pricing. They might even ask you of something that you don't already have on the shelf, in which case you have to think how to respond. Basically, there will be an aspect of interaction now with those potential leads. They will give you intent. I am looking to buy this. I'm looking to give me a quote on this. Do you guys provide this? That sort of thing. That's intent. At the back of that, you might go back with a quote, you might go back with a response, you might get into a meeting, then you get into evaluation. Now, all those three is really prospects. So you've created leads through awareness and creating interest. You've started some engagement, provided some quotes, interacted, opened an account, potentially given a demo, given a free trial, all that sort of thing. Those are prospects. And then you get into moving those prospects into a real customer. A real customer in this case being somebody who actually buys something from you. Either has they ever bought something from you or is now buying something from you. Now that is purchase, okay? And that drives customers. So the funnel we are talking about here, so the customer acquisition funnel, as I said, starts from awareness down to a real purchase by a customer. And there are strategies on each of these levels. There are strategies to generate leads, strategies to convert prospects into customers, etc. The actual acquisition process, as I said, is you attract strangers, you convert them into potential visitors and leads, you close a deal or a service, and that becomes a customer, and then you continue to delight that existing customer, and they become your own promoters to actually complete the circle and bring more strangers into your funnel. This process is, I would imagine, fairly familiar to a lot of you. Attracting, converting, and of course closing. What most businesses fail at is this bit here, the last bit, which is about delight. In other words, once you've acquired a customer, how do you keep them coming back to you? How do you retain them? How do they buy more from you? How do they go and become your best fans in the market, particularly for SMEs, because SMEs do not have a huge budget to acquire more customers. So you need to delight your existing customers in order for them to be actually your salespeople, subconsciously, indirectly. And that's a key takeaway, that if you go back to your offices today and you say, how do I delight my existing customers to the point where they actually end up introducing other people to my business, you're on to a winner. Okay. Here's an example of a typical customer acquisition flow. I will not go into a lot of details. Here's an example of a customer acquisition. I will not go into a lot of details on it, but I've mentioned to you that the sales funnel at the beginning starts with awareness all the way to continued engagement. The customer life cycle itself starts with a visitor who ends up being a loyal customer. The key thing being a loyal customer. What's a loyal customer? Somebody who's promoting your products on your behalf, referring other customers, coming back to buy from you. And then, of course, at the top layer, we have different ways of engaging from a marketing perspective. It's just an example. I'll share this slide after this, but I wanted to use this to bring alive the example I was giving on the customer life cycle. So some examples of customer acquisition strategies that are quite key. Now, I've kept it very simple so that this doesn't become too complex. But the key point is, the example I've given here is this. The first thing is, if you have to acquire customers, you need to define your target audience. In other words, you need to say, who is my potential customer? Where are those guys? Where are these people? Is it, let's say, for example, I'm selling baby products. If I'm selling baby products, potentially the real person who can buy that would be new mothers, existing mothers, potentially aunties, maybe fathers as well. But the key point is, now where do you find these guys? Because you do not want to spend a lot of time maybe selling your baby products to teenagers, as an example. Just use that as an example. Maybe they are not the right audience. So the point is, you actually need to define your target audience. If you haven't, you will usually find that you, one, do not have high conversion of your existing sales efforts. You're not getting a return on investment on your marketing budget. You're not meeting your sales targets, Your competition is unknown and most probably outcompeting you, but even more importantly, you may not even have sales. So define your target audience. That's important. The second thing is to say, now that I know who my target audience is, how do I reach out to them? Okay, so the example I've given is, if you're let's stick with the example of baby products. If you're in the baby product space and you decided, you know what, I'm going to target, let's say, new mothers, because they are more likely to buy nappies, they are more likely to buy baby milk, etc. As an example, you say, the right acquisition, how do I get to them? It may be that you say, look, I'm going to look out, how can I advertise them in their Facebook groups. There are Facebook groups that are specifically targeted, a collection of that sort of client, potential clientele. It may be it's the sort of magazines they read. Maybe they read magazines on bringing up little ones. In which case, you might want to put an advertisement in that magazine. It may be a TV show that talks about new mothers, to either appear there or somehow to advertise on that channel. The point is, you've identified your target audience. You then say, how do I acquire the attention of that audience? Where are these guys? What are they doing with their time? And therefore, how do I get into that? The second thing could be, I will skip number 3. Number 4 could be, you say, you know what, one of the ways I'm going, now that I know where they are and I know how I can get to them, I'm going to give them some giveaways. Okay, some freebies, some demos, some trials, some example of your products. You may then say, you know what, I'm also going to look for entities that are already providing services to this target audience, and on that basis, I will go and see how I can partner with them. The example I would give you there is, there are people in the banking space, for example, who like to partner, for example, with manufacturers to give credit to the manufacturers' clients. Or you have people in the private school business who like to partner with sports equipment guys because there's an audience there for them. The point is, you need to say, who's the target audience? How do I get to them? Where do I get to them? What is it I give them as a hook for them to sample your products, to sample your services, and potentially to even partner with somebody else who's already servicing them? These are just examples, but the key point is the first 2, which is define your target audience and then understand how to get to them. The rest will flow from there. There is some homework for you here, which is this. You need to be able to plot the journey of your potential customer. How does he or she come to your site or to your office or to your branch? When they are there, how do they buy? How do they decide to buy? How do they say you're a law firm, as an example? I'll use law firm as an example. If you're a law firm, do you wait for people to have issues before they come to you, or do you preempt that by saying, these sort of guys might be having this problem, and then you try and say, how do I get them to interact with me? If you're already running a business, there's a lot more work to actually do. In other words, how do you, for example, decide which part of your business is the market lead, which is the product or service that is the core product or service on which you are going to build the rest? Say, for example, you're in the manufacturing space and you're manufacturing pens, as an example. You would be saying, I am manufacturing pens, I'm manufacturing probably books, I'm also manufacturing other stationery. You need to then say, which of these products is the key product for this business, because that will be the key determinant for your customer acquisition strategy, where you build your target audience and your right channels. And it is on that basis that you will be able to not just sell this, and then with time start talking of other products you can add to this core, the buyers of this core product. So again, if you're already running a business, you know who your customers are, you know what they're buying, you know which products are the key products. You need to be saying, how do I use that key product as the main product to build a larger profile? And the sort of work that needs to go there requires you to have a framework for customer acquisition. It sounds like a big thing the way I'm saying it, but actually it is really three things. It's who's the audience, how do I engage with them, what is the core product or service I'm selling to them, and those three become the basis for expanding your customer acquisition framework. Before I go to customer retention, which is actually the more core bit, because most of you are already in business and have customers, I would want to emphasize one thing here, which I mentioned earlier, but it's important to mention it. This step where you transition customers to promoters is the core of this journey. To the extent that you have customers who, for example, you do not know the last time they bought from you, or you do not know what they bought from you, or you do not know who else they buy from, in all likelihood, you won't be able to transition them from clone customers to promoters. If you do not have a way of getting feedback from your customers, if you do not have a way of even confirming whether the service they received from you is good or requires improvement, you will be unlikely to transition your customers to promoters. It's an important thing to emphasize because it also links into the next session on customer retention. Absolutely important, customers transition to promoters, because the essence of that is that you will then have what's essentially called easy sales and easy revenue, simply because you now actually have free sales people who are in the guise of your customers promoting your business out there. And who do they promote to? They will promote it either to your existing customers or they promote it to strangers. Once they promote them to strangers, the process begins. You start moving you start moving those strangers up this chain to the point where they become customers, and you transition them to promoters, and the cycle begins. That happens for big businesses. That is a key everyday ask, even for a firm like ours. And that process done properly is absolutely worth it. Perspective. I will jump quickly to customer retention. My intention was that the way I was going to balance this conversation is about 30% of the time was going to be spent on customer acquisition, the other 70% on customer retention, because this is really the heart of it. This is where SMEs struggle. The SMEs find it easier to try and run for a new customer. Converting that is effort for everybody, including SMEs. Retaining is where it all becomes a problem. And most businesses and SMEs do not grow because they are not able to retain their existing customers. So it is a lot of effort every day to go win customers. That's why you feel tired and exhausted and frustrated and out of budget, because it is more expensive to acquire new customers, and SMEs spend unbelievable amount of time focusing on customer acquisition of new customers and less time on servicing and retaining existing customers. It should be the other way around. The SMEs that know how to do that scale undoubtedly faster, they are more robust, and they are more likely to move out from an SME into large corporate. Trust me, this we see, and this data to back that up. So customer retention then. Now, studies show that existing customers are 50% more likely to try new products and services and to spend almost a third more when compared to new customers. Just that statement alone tells you that if you have 24 hours in a day, you should be spending at least 50% of that time focusing on your existing customers. But the point here is this. The probability of selling to an existing customer is way higher than selling to a new customer. We take about 70% probability of closing new customer versus 20%. In each case, you're saying for every potentially, the numbers may not line up, but it means for every 10 calls you make to your existing customers today, in all likelihood, 6 to 7 will buy, compared to 10 calls to new customers, where about 2 will buy. It goes without saying, focus on your existing customers. Existing customers have already experienced your product. You have a relationship with them. If you focus on them, in all likelihood, you will grow the share of wallet. By that I mean, if they were buying 2 products and you have 10 products available, they are more likely to buy the other 7 or so products on your list, compared to going to convince a new guy to buy at least 1 product of yours. Okay, so again, existing customers are more likely to buy and indeed to try new products and services. Why do customers leave a company then? If you have gone to if SMEs are spending so much time acquiring new customers, what is the real reason a lot of them leave? Now, there are natural reasons. A customer dies, a customer leaves the market, somebody gets a friend to provide a service, blah, blah, blah. The key one is the 2 at the bottom. The biggest reason is the customer believes you don't care about them. Okay, now, it sounds a bit soft and mushy, but the truth of the matter is, if a customer believes you care about them, they will pick up your call. They will respond to your request. They will probably be a bit more reasonable about pricing. They will in all likelihood come back to you with genuine feedback, okay, so that you can improve on your products or your services. They will more likely refer you to new clients. They will more likely tell you how they're experiencing the same service from competitors. The point is, you can see the softer stuff is actually what matters. That customers leave a company if they feel you don't care about them. So what does that mean to you? It means you need to care about your customer. Then the question becomes, how do you care about it? How do you show that? How do you make that happen? How do you bring that alive? That is part of the strategy for customer retention. In other words, if you focus a lot of your effort on showing you care for to your existing customers, in all likelihood they will stay with the company. Of course, the second biggest one here is the people who are dissatisfied with your service. Again, if you care about your customers, they are more likely to tell you about your service. They are more likely to give you a chance to correct if something is wrong. They are more likely to accept a replacement if it's a product that can be replaced. They are more likely to probably collaborate with you to improve what is not working. Okay, so those 2 go hand in hand, but the key thing is how do you making sure you show care to your customers. That's part of customer retention. We'll touch on how you bring that alive actually. I also wanted to highlight to you just to re-emphasize the conversion funnel. If you saw a different way of looking at it in the previous slides. So you're starting with discovery. There is a realization that is a need. In other words, people really do need your product or service, and the consideration for that service or product you're giving. In other words, is a exchange of value, price, money, whatever it is. And then, of course, you convert them into a customer, and then you start retaining them. This Facebook, digital platforms, social media, LinkedIn, all that stuff, those typically are part of the discovery channel. So if you are in the SME space and you're not using a lot of these platforms, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, I really would strongly encourage you to do. It's a cheaper way of discovering your client, your potential target audience, engaging with them, and even more importantly, of course, understanding what else your customers might require. But I wanted to just highlight that retention is at the lower end, and all these other things, particularly the new media, is at the discovery phase. There are actually practical ways of measuring customer retention. Okay, and it doesn't matter whether you're a small company or a big company. You can measure your customer retention rate. This is important because, number one, if you don't know what your customer retention rate, what that tells me is you don't know how many new customers you have, you don't know when they were acquired, you don't know what your existing customers are, okay, and even more importantly, you probably do not have, in all likelihood, a customer retention strategy. You can't have one if you're not even measuring it. There's a simple way to measure customer retention rate, and this applies to all businesses. service businesses, product businesses, big businesses, SMEs, it doesn't matter. So the number of customers at the end of the period, you remove the number of new customers acquired during that period, and then you divide by the number of customers at the start of that period, and that gives you a percentage. Okay, it's fairly straightforward. Now, what that tells you is you have to know these three numbers at a minimum. You need to know the number of customers at the end of your period. You need to know the number of new customers you acquired at the end of. So it tells you you actually need to go back and say, who are my customers? When did they come in? And more importantly, who are the new ones that are coming in this period? You can define that period however you like. It could be depending on what you're providing, whether it's a product or service, whichever sector you're in. It could be, you could do that monthly, you could do that quarterly, you could do that annually. It's up to you. But of course, the more regular you do it, the better it is for you to identify opportunities for growth and opportunities for correction. So the point is that there is a way to measure customer retention rate. There are more complicated ways of doing it. Good start for any SME. Now, there are about 5 ways. Examples. I'll give you different examples for customer retention strategies, but let me start with these 5, or the proven ways to retain customers for life. It's important to say for life because, as I said, existing customers are better for you than new customers. So it's obvious. You talk to your customer, okay? So you connect with them on social media. It's important. You'll be surprised that just going on Twitter as an example and following your customers. If they have a business, they have a Twitter account, just follow them. If they post something that you think resonates with you or you have a view on, comment on it, like it. These things actually is what creates rapport with customers in terms of you care about me, you're attentive to me, you are alive to what I'm sharing online. We have a relationship. You're not a stranger. So talk to your customers, connect with them on social, ask questions, conduct service, stay in touch. This is important. A lot of SMEs sell and sit back and then hope that you will call us when you need us. And that's why you lose customers to a competition, or indeed they never come back to you. Then you need to answer your customers' questions, whether they are misunderstood. They are always misunderstanding. It doesn't matter which business you're in, whether it's big or small, there will always be misunderstanding. But responding to your customer questions, having periodic sessions, you could have let's say every month or every quarter, you have a 1 hour with your key customers. You iron out whatever issues are there. You can ask them to ask questions. These things are what will differentiate you from the next guy that you're competing with. So answering your customer questions, very important. Do not ignore, however annoying customer questions are, please do not ignore them. It's important to respond to them. If you don't, trust me, you are more likely going to lose that customer. Take time to do that. What I've seen a lot of SMEs do is they create time. You say I will take Thursday afternoon to answer customer questions, and you let your customers, when they bring in the queries, depending on your time, you say, we've received your query or your question. Please allow us to respond to you on Thursday, or whatever it is. So Thursday, you put time aside, you respond to these questions. In the meantime, in that period, you are researching what the issues are. You get the background so that you also don't respond in a way that is not progressive. Sorry, I'm going to mute somebody again. Please go on mute if you're not talking. We'll have the Q&A. And then that's turning it. Okay, excellent. So then the next 3 pillars is to offer excellent customer support. I will be perfectly honest and say every business has its own challenges on this pillar, but to be frank, most SMEs don't have very good customer support, and part of that is because they see it as an afterthought, or they think it's very expensive to do, or indeed they do not know how to provide after sales support once you've sold somebody. Now, remember I said it is easier and the return on investment is higher if you focus on your existing customers. In order to focus on your existing customers and to show you care, it is important to have after sales support or after service support, or indeed full-blown customer care, depending on where you are. It is those things that will really differentiate you from a lot of your competitors, and also ensure that your clients see you as somebody who's keen on helping them get a good experience from the interaction they have with you. So if you don't have one, even service industries, I've gone to law firms who think that they shouldn't have a customer support, and in fact they should. I've gone to manufacturers who do not have after sales support, because they think you've taken my product, you use it well, kama itafanya kazi utatuita. But actually that after sales support need not be in person. You can create an FAQ, frequently asked questions. You can create some how-to videos and you put them on your YouTube channel. You can take what customers are complaining about and run a session to your customers to say this is how actually to solve this thing. So it doesn't have to be full blown. It doesn't have to be expensive, but your customer support is important and needs to be proactive so that you exceed customers' expectation and they see you differently. Number 4 is related to number 2, which is you have to absolutely act on customer feedback. When you get feedback from your customers, whether it is positive or negative, you need to react to it. If it is positive, of course, you say thank you, but even more importantly, you use that as a way to learn how to please other customers. If it is negative, then you need to work on improving on it and to make changes to your process, products, services, etc. And even more importantly, where they are not happy, you need to step up and offer to make good, depending on what the issues were. So the point is, act on customer feedback. It's related to number 2. And then, of course, you need to look beyond the first purchase. It goes without saying that if I bought something from you and you try and see how to sell you more, it goes without saying that I would need to understand what is it you are keen on, and the best way to understand what is it you're keen on so that I can sell you other stuff is to focus on the feedback, number 4, to offer excellent customer support, and of course to answer customer questions. Okay, so that's important. Loyalty programs are some of the easiest customer retention programs you can ever do. They are inexpensive and they are unbelievably effective. And loyalty programs do not have to be elaborate things with cards and all that. It could be just a simple thing of even just saying, would you want to be part of our loyalty program? What would you want to see in our loyalty program if you had one? If you look at your competition and they have loyalty programs, what can you borrow from there and adapt to your purpose? And the truth of the matter is, just having one separates you from the crowd automatically. The mere fact that you have a loyalty program suggests to a customer, existing and potential, that you are not just about one sale. It's about a relationship. It's something that you would want to maintain, because somebody knows, if I'm on a loyalty program, this guy is going to make sure that I'm getting good service so that I remain on it. So automatically it's a meeting of minds in terms of this is not just about the first purchase. Okay, so that's important. Now there is a point on number 5 here that's about bringing back customers. Very quickly, I'll go through that by saying that that says, when you lose a customer, it could happen softly. In other words, they don't come back to you, they don't give you bad feedback, or it could be they actively tell you they are disappointed and they are leaving. Either way, you need to have a strategy to bring them back. Okay, and that you can address through point number 2. So when you lose an existing customer, you should spend more time bringing that one back instead of acquiring a new one. Okay, let me repeat that. If you lose an existing customer, and an existing customer as he or she has been with you and they are disappointed because of the service and they leave, and they either tell you or they leave, or they don't ever do a second thing, you should focus more effort on that one to get that one back rather than a new one. Now most SMEs say siuende tapata biashara kwingine, so you focus on new one. What the problem with that is, one, this guy might end up being a bad ambassador for you, so they will go talking bad about your business. More importantly, they are more likely to pick up your call because they know who you are, if you focus on trying to bring them back, in fact, when you bring them back, they are more likely to stay than otherwise. So again, it echoes the same point I made earlier, which is focus on existing customers. Even the existing customers that leave on good terms or otherwise, focus on bringing them back. That's important. Now, telecom companies and banks do that very well. Okay, so it is up to you to maybe borrow from that experience. I will not spend a lot of time on this. The point is you need to understand your customer. The way you understand your customer is you create what are called buyer personas or customer personas, a client persona that gives you a sense of an ideal customer for you is what? That you look at this an ideal customer for you, a theoretical customer. What are the deal breakers? Maybe it's pricing, maybe if it's something that does not have after sales support, is a deal breaker. If it's a product without a warranty or a guarantee, it's a deal breaker. If it's something that does not have, let's say, does not earn loyalty points, is a deal breaker. Whatever it is, the point is you create this persona, and that is the persona that you now use to manage retention. Okay, so that you now know if I answer this question to an existing customer, they are more likely to come back to me. If I price things this way, they are more likely to stay with me. Things like that. I will not dwell a lot on that because that now is getting into also aspects of sales. There are other more specific customer retention strategy. One is about value for money. That primarily is around how you price your product. So you need to get a good sense of, are you pricing competitively? Is pricing the main point for your potential customers, or its value and the quality, the main price, the main consideration? If it is, for example, quality, then price is probably not the issue, and so forth. Then there is an aspect on how do you ensure repeat purchases. And as I said, you have to say, what are the incentives I give my customers so that they come back to me? Are you, for example, the simple ones will be, you tell somebody there's a loyalty program for if you buy 9 items from me, or you buy 9 times from me, the 10th one is free, or the 10th one is discounted. Or if you refer me to another customer and they buy from me, your next purchase will be 10% off. Things like that. So repeat purchase, you can manage it in different ways. Word of mouth marketing, it goes without saying. I will not dwell on that. And then brand, it could be that the way to retain your customers may be a real emotional connection with your brand, and that becomes the basis for retaining your customer. If that's the case, then you will focus your customer retention strategy primarily on driving a good brand vibe. Okay, so let's say the example I'll give you is if you are selling, let's say the example is Coca-Cola. Coca-Cola are very good at ensuring that you don't think a lot about the price, you don't think a lot about coming back the second time. You associate yourself more with the brand. There's a certain brand vibe you get from Coca-Cola, or even people like Apple, that enable you to that ensures your customers stay with you. They are retained with you. In supermarkets, instead of brand, they might say our brand represents quality and things that are fresh, and on top of that, we'll also give you good prices, and we'll also give you loyalty programs, things like that. But the point is, if you as an SME think, you know what, the best way to manage my customers, now that I know what my customers are, in other words, now that I've created this persona, is the brand, then you spend most of your effort emphasizing the qualities and values of your brand to your existing customers and potential target customers. Again, that's one of the lenses on customer retention. So is it a pricing discussion? Is it focusing on repeat purchases? Is it focusing on marketing? Is it brand? The other way to look at it is to say, I have brand. So here on the right here, I've focused on brand, and I've made sure my brand is out there. People know about it. They associate it with whatever values you want. It could be, maybe it's a fun brand. It could be strength and quality. It could be efficiency. It could be safety. Whatever the brand association you want to be associated with is. And then, as I said, for purpose of repeat purchases, you focus on what are the future intentions of the customer. Are they likely to repurchase? Are they likely to to increase the size of the purchase? Are they likely to respond to discounts, for example? And that becomes the basis of building the future intentions lens. In other words, what are my existing customers likely to do, and therefore how do I respond to that? Advocacy is similar to the marketing aspect I mentioned, and then value for money also is similar to what I mentioned about pricing. Now, there's a key thing I think that is worth emphasizing here before I go to the other example of customer retention strategy, which is this. You have a customer, there are 3 selling things that you do. The first one is, which is easier, you focus on cross-selling. So cross-selling is, I am in the business of selling pens. Anyone buying a pen also buys ink. I'm using that as assume this is a fountain pen. So I cross-sell you ink. I also try to sell you ink. So if I'm selling you, if you come to a hardware shop and you're buying fertilizer, I will try and also sell you seeds or farm equipment, because in all likelihood you are in that space. So that's cross-selling. The other selling dimension is upselling. So upselling is I'm a hardware shop. I'm selling you fertilizer. The fertilizer I'm selling you is fertilizer for, let's say, 2,000 shillings. But there is higher quality type of fertilizer that is 5,000 shillings. So depending on how I understand my customer and my view on where he or she is, I can upsell. So instead of selling them seeds, which is a cross-selling, I'll sell them a more expensive fertilizer. That's upselling. That's a strategy as well for not just satisfying the customer, but you're actually growing your customer share of wallet from your customer. So that is upselling. Okay, so I've cross-sold, I've upsold. There is the third one, which is next selling. So next selling is, I'm a hardware shop. I'll use that still as an example. I'm a hardware shop. I have sold you fertilizer. I have upsold you more expensive fertilizer. I have cross-sold you seeds. I can cross-sell you. In other words, it could be, not cross-sell, next sell you. In other words, I sell you a different altogether service or product. Let's say I might sell you, I can lease you a tractor. I'm using that as an example. Or I can sell you farming land, because you are in the agricultural space. Or I can sell you agricultural insurance. I'm using these are the examples, but that's an example of a next sell. It's not in the same line here. So it's not in this dimension or that dimension. It's in a different dimension. So all those are examples. Now, the way SMEs do next selling as a way to retain customers is not to necessarily do it yourself. That is why you do something called things like partnerships or alliances, where you go talk to other SMEs or other businesses in a different field, and you tell them, you know what, the products and services you're selling would be of use to my customers. What I'll do is, let's get into an alliance where I can refer them to you. Okay, so you will have a revenue share. You'll give me a commission, or in return you will also refer clients to me. Okay, so that's next selling. So you're not necessarily selling it from your own balance sheet or from your own product category, but from your own client base, you can still next sell and get the business. Now, in our market, Safaricom is doing that very successfully, unknown to you. Okay, so they are next selling so many things in the guise of Safaricom. Safaricom is a good Kenyan company, so hopefully they don't take it wrong. But the point is, they are doing a lot of next selling because they built a huge customer base where they have cross-sold them, they have upsold them, and now they are next selling them. So you're seeing there is loans that are being sold through the Safaricom option, the Safaricom customer base. SMEs can learn from that, and that's an important point of even customer retention, because now a customer realizes you are actually looking out for not just what you're able to sell, you're looking out for their well-being, or you're helping them get access to other services that are important to them. It's important, of course, to have the right arrangement with your alliance or partner, and even more important, to ensure that they also stick to your values. I'll speed up a bit so that we have 15 minutes to talk about Q&A. So here is an example of some other customer retention strategies. So you need to understand the reasons why the customer came to your company. You need to set up the highest standard of customer retention. And of course, you also need to deliver value as a source or for your customers. I'll share this slide with you, so don't dwell a lot on that. This is also just another example. It echoes the previous slides. So for example, you need to appreciate your clients. I've mentioned that. You need to clarify and define what the customers expect. I've talked about using social media in this day and age. It's absolutely important. You need to have a website. If you don't have a website, please do. They are very non-expensive, and they enable you to they show a presence for your potential customers, but even more important, it's easier for your existing customers to send that link, to share that link with potential referrals, so they become your promoters. That's important. It's cheap actually to have a website. If you don't have one, please get one. And then I've also mentioned about being more structured around how you manage your existing customers. These are just some examples. I will not run through them because I've already touched on them. So things like offering promotions, offering discounts, hosting events, reconnecting with the existing customers, having loyalty programs, ensuring you have the right win-back strategy. Actually, let me emphasize that slightly. You remember I mentioned about the bring back customer view. In other words, if you lose a customer, how do you get them back? It's a win-back strategy. Okay, so how do you get them back? You need to know why they left. You need to know whether they left on good terms or bad terms. You need to figure out who they are buying the new service or product from. And then you need to see what sort of feedback they are already given you. And that becomes the basis for saying, how do I go back to them? Maybe if you lost them because of pricing, it could be a pricing discussion. If you lost them because of after sales customer support, you then need to go back saying, now we have put these things in place, we can now support you better. If it is a quality issue, you go back to them saying, we've addressed these quality issues, etc. The point is, it is cheaper and more, you get a higher return on investment getting lost customers back than winning new ones. So that's important. I will not necessarily emphasize the EY drivers of growth. Suffice it to say that from EY, we have a framework that enables businesses small to big to come up with roadmaps on how to address the key things on the 7 drivers of growth, which are people, technology, operations, customer, finance, transaction, and risk. And as you can see, customer is the central pillar. And there is a strategic way of doing that. It enables you to say, this is where I am with my customers on my customer journey. This is where I aspire to be. And then the system automatically tells you, this is what you need to do, a real roadmap on doing that. And it will then, of course, enable you to drive your growth. I will stop there in the interest of time so that we can have Q&A. Back to you, Lucy, Dennis.
Thank you, Frank, for that insightful presentation. And so, like I'd mentioned earlier on, at this time, we'd love to invite your queries.
Maybe I can emphasize a certain point while we are on this call, and that point is this: that for SMEs, 3 things. Number one, a lot of time customer acquisition and retention is equated with sales and marketing, and specifically within marketing, it's a lot of SMEs understand it to mean advertising. And it's important to correct that, because once you talk about advertising, you start talking about spending dollars or spending money. And then SMEs find it difficult to, either because they have a limited budget or they cannot come up with a real advertising strategy. So the key point I want to make there, the clarification I would really want to make there, particularly for SMEs, is that you need customer acquisition and retention is not really about advertising. It's about having real practical strategies for identifying your target audience, and figuring out how to get to them. So you've seen actually businesses move from SMEs to big businesses with very minimal advertising spend. So do not necessarily seeing it as a money being spent. In fact, nowadays a lot of the advertising is unpaid advertising. So the example I'll give you is the mere fact that I am here talking to you with my EY banners back there, introduced as an EY person. You've already associated that with a potential service provision with a brand like ours, similar to Invest in Africa and similar to Mastercard. Now, so if you're clever, if you put your mind to actually clarifying your target audience and where they potentially are, you can actually grow, acquire customers, and keep them very successfully without necessarily spending money. That's the key thing. That's a key pointer to make, so that you don't get focused too much on I'm going to spend money on radio, TV, online, and newspapers and things like that. I think there is one or two other questions I can see there, Lucy. Should I go ahead and try and tackle them?
Yeah. Yes, Frank, you can go ahead and tackle if the strategies work across the board for all industries.
Okay, thanks. So that's a question from Ed Ngare. Do these strategies work across the board for all industries? The short answer to that is yes. The long answer to that is they need to be customized to different industries. And the way that happens is, you recall there's a slide where I mentioned about a client persona or a buyer persona. So depending on the industry, you will have a different persona. So the example to give you is, let's say you are an SME selling to a multinational versus an SME selling to one of the local businesses. You will find that the multinational buys differently and onboards new suppliers differently and retains new existing suppliers differently to maybe a local business. So you would have to tweak how you engage to acquire multinationals as your client and how you keep them. And you will usually find, for example, multinationals might have, or in fact some of the big companies here will have very stringent quality metrics on whether you should continue to be a supplier or not. If you misperform on an existing contract, they might kick you off, as an example. So, but the point is, these strategies work across all industries. You just need to tweak them. The magnitude of them might be different depending on what you're doing, but the message is the same. There's a question, I guess, leading up to that on the broad point about all industries. The key point here to note is a lot of SMEs also lose time and effort because they are not too focused on particular key industries. You heard me mention what is your core product or your core service. That is what will decide whether you want to go for all industries or particular ones. So I'm not necessarily sure whether the question was a leading question to should you therefore go for all industries because now you know how to acquire customers and how to try and retain them, or the reverse of it, which is choose your core product or service, decide who is the target audience, make that work instead of spraying across different industries. Thanks.
Could you clarify the list that shows technology, new markets at the top in relation to customer acquisition? Are they not related? Tech to facilitate acquisition. That's from Ted.
So Ted, I guess the slide you're talking about is a slide that showed the classic conversion funnel, and I made a reference to the likes of Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Google, etc. being part of the discovery phase. I am assuming that's the question, and the clarification to make there is we are in a new world now. It would be absolutely not right for any business to not have a digital lens and a social media lens. It's imperative. It's literally the oxygen of every business now. So you cannot really effectively acquire customers and retain customers if you do not have a link to the digital and tech aspect of this. After all is said and done, tech is an enabler. So see it as a tool, just like you see radio or TV as a tool. That is my case. Every business, irrespective of where you are, will have that footprint as part of it. Also, we have so this the other question I can respond to very quickly, Lucy, before we finish the call is a question that says, do existing customers include those who have purchased before, i.e., first time contact buyers? A short answer to that question is yes. Existing customers include those that have purchased before. In other words, the first time contact buyers. But there's a bit of context there, which is that if it's a customer who has bought but hasn't come back, then it means you need to and you start your win back strategy, which I highlighted. If it's a customer who actively left, in other words, he told you, I'm leaving, I'm not happy with your business and all that, then that is a lost customer that needs to be won back. So there are different ways of doing it. So either it's a dormant customer, they bought once, they've never bought again, in which case it's about winning them back, reactivating them, versus actively lost, in which case it's not a dormant customer, it's a win. You have to bring them back, win them back. But the short answer is yes, they are existing customers.
And so at this point, allow me to invite again Dennis Okore for the official closing remarks.
Thank you very much. Thanks very much, Frank. Indeed, that has been a very insightful session that we've had on the subjects of customer acquisition and customer retention. The key highlight for me has been the differentiating or debunking some of the information that I had around relating this to do with advertising, and more so the reaffirmation that he has done to say that customer retention is actually more beneficial to the business, or it's more strenuous, or it's more cost effective than reaching out to seek more customers. And importantly, he has given us very practical tips that we can apply in our businesses going forward. So thank you so much, Frank, for sharing with us that insightful session, and more importantly, borrowing from real examples that we can apply for our businesses. So mine is just to thank you on behalf of Invest in Africa for creating time to be with us once again, and we appreciate you for that. I would like also to extend a word of thank you for everyone who made it to today's session. And this is a strong statement because it means that we are ready to stretch beyond, we are ready to seek more information, and more importantly, try to look at what are the new or other ways where we can work towards improving our business. And this is essentially what Invest in Africa is all about, and even the ecosystem that we've created with our partners like EY. So thank you very much for making time to attend. As we come to an end, there's a feedback form that has been shared. Please kindly give us some feedback there, give us suggestions on how we can improve or even continue doing some of this work that we're doing going forward, and you can suggest some ideas that are coming through. Earlier I'd shared that you may want to understand more about what the SME Recovery and Resilience Program is all about, where we're running the masterclasses, the coaching session, and the peer-to-peer session, as well as the access to finance, where we have the investor readiness programs, as well as the Knowledge Academy. So to know more about this, you will be sharing an email there for Pauline. Pauline is our colleague, so you can write to pauline.mishai@investinafrica.com. So that will be able to give you, will write it on the chat box, so you can pick it up from there. This conversation is also going on in our social media feeds. You can get us on Facebook at Invest in Africa Kenya, on LinkedIn at Invest in Africa, and you can subscribe, by the way, to our YouTube channel at Invest in Africa Kenya, and you will get the recording for today's session. And more importantly, you can interact with the past recordings for the past sessions, and then you can really get the information or the knowledge that you missed previously. So mine is to thank you and to wish you a nice weekend that is coming up, and also the Mashujaa Day. Keep it posted on our social media feeds, and engage with us after this. And we look forward to the next session, which we'll be communicating in the coming days. Thank you very much, and I wish you a good day.